Hey guys, tonight we begin with something that might change how you think about ancient Egypt forever. When you picture the pyramids, you probably imagine thousands of slaves toiling under the merciless desert sun, whipped into submission by cruel overseers. Hollywood has painted this image so vividly that it's become our default vision of ancient Egyptian construction. But here's the thing, that's not even close to what actually happened. The reality is far more fascinating and, honestly, far more human than any movie could capture. These weren't slaves at all, but skilled workers, organized laborers, and seasonal farmers who created one of history's most sophisticated workplace systems. They didn't just survive the brutal desert heat, they mastered it, turning what should have been an impossible environment into a thriving industrial complex that operated for over 1,000 years. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world, especially when we're talking about people who lived and worked in conditions most of us can barely imagine. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background. Though trust me, it's nothing compared to the wind systems these ancient workers created. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Back to a time when surviving the workday meant mastering the art of living in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. The morning shift. When work began before dawn, you wake up at 3:30 a.m. and the air is still mercifully cool. This isn't because you're an early bird or because your alarm clock malfunctioned. This is survival. In ancient Egypt, if you waited until sunrise to begin physical labor, you were essentially signing your own death warrant. The workers who built the pyramids, carved the temples, and maintained the vast irrigation systems understood something that modern construction crews in hot climates still practice today. Beat the heat or the heat beats you. But here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't just a loose understanding passed down through generations. The Egyptians had systematized early morning work into a science. Archaeological evidence from worker villages near the Giza complex shows that the workday was divided into precise shifts, with the heaviest labor scheduled for the hours between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m. You're not just stumbling around in the dark hoping for the best. You're part of a coordinated effort involving thousands of people who all understand that timing isn't just important. It's everything. The moment you step outside your mud brick dwelling, you're immediately aware of the temperature difference. At 3:30 a.m. in the Egyptian desert, the temperature has dropped to its lowest point of the day, sometimes a full 40 degrees cooler than the afternoon peak. Your body, accustomed to this routine, doesn't feel sluggish or disoriented. Instead, you feel alert, energized even. Your supervisors have learned that workers are actually more productive in these pre-dawn hours than they would be even in perfect room temperature conditions, because everyone knows they're racing against time. You grab your tools, perhaps a copper chisel and wooden mallet if you're a stone worker, or a rope and wooden lever if you're moving blocks, and you notice they feel different in the cool air. The metal isn't burning hot from sitting in the sun. The wood isn't expanded and slippery from heat exposure. Everything works better in these precious morning hours, and the Egyptians built their entire construction schedule around this simple truth. As you walk toward the work site, you're not alone. Thousands of other workers are moving through the darkness, their oil lamps creating a constellation of moving lights across the desert landscape. This isn't chaos, it's choreography. Different work gangs leave their quarters at precisely timed intervals to avoid congestion at the work sites. The stonecutters leave first, because their work requires the most precision and therefore the coolest temperatures. The block movers leave next, because their work requires the most sustained physical effort. The mortar mixers and detail workers leave last, because their tasks can continue later into the morning without becoming immediately dangerous. The supervisors have calculated all of this down to the minute. They know exactly how long each task takes, exactly when the sun will rise. exactly when the temperature will become unbearable for each type of work. This isn't guesswork. It's the result of centuries of trial and error, passed down through generations of foremen who understood that efficient scheduling wasn't just about productivity. It was about keeping people alive. By 4 a.m., you're at your workstation, and the serious labor begins. If you're cutting stone, you can feel your chisel biting cleanly into the limestone, which is still cool and workable from the night air. If you're moving blocks, your rope doesn't burn your hands and your wooden rollers glide smoothly across the sand that hasn't yet turned into blazing powder. If you're mixing mortar, the materials blend properly instead of cracking and separating from heat exposure. You work steadily, purposefully, but without the frantic desperation that would come if you were fighting against the clock in rising heat. The supervisors move among the work gangs, not cracking whips as Hollywood would have you believe, but coordinating the complex logistics of getting massive amounts of work done in a narrow window of opportunity. They're checking progress, adjusting schedules, making sure that the most heat-sensitive tasks get completed first. As the morning progresses, you can feel the subtle changes in the air. The stars fade gradually, the eastern horizon begins to lighten, and most importantly, you can sense the temperature starting to climb. This isn't gradual. In the desert, once the sun appears, the temperature rises quickly and relentlessly. By 6 a.m., you're working faster, not because anyone is pressuring you, but because you can feel time running out. The morning shift represents something remarkable about ancient Egyptian society, the recognition that human beings could accomplish incredible things, but only if the work was organized around human limitations, rather than trying to force humans to overcome impossible conditions. When modern engineers study the precision of pyramid construction or the efficiency of ancient Egyptian quarries, they often focus on the tools and techniques. But the real breakthrough was temporal. Figuring out when to work was just as important as figuring out how to work. By 7 a.m., you've accomplished more than many modern construction workers complete in a full 8-hour day. By 8 a.m., the quality of work begins to decline as the heat affects concentration and precision. By 9 a.m., anyone still doing heavy physical labor is courting heat exhaustion. And by 10 a.m., the morning shift is over and you're heading back to shelter, knowing that you just completed the most productive and safest hours of your workday. The science of shade, engineering survival in open desert. You step away from your workstation at 10 a.m., and the first thing you notice is that direct sunlight now feels like a physical weight pressing down on your shoulders. But here's what separates you from a modern person thrown into the same situation. You know exactly where to go, because the Egyptians didn't just endure the desert heat. They engineered comprehensive solutions for it. What you're about to experience is one of the most sophisticated workplace climate control systems ever developed, created thousands of years before air conditioning was even imagined. The first thing you encounter isn't a building or tent, but something much more clever. A shade structure that looks almost impossibly simple, but represents centuries of refinement. These aren't random tarps thrown over poles. They're precisely angled linen canopies that create maximum shade while channeling airflow underneath. The angle isn't arbitrary. It's calculated to block the sun at its peak intensity, while creating a Venturi effect that accelerates any available breeze. You duck under one of these shade structures, and immediately you feel the temperature drop by 15 to 20 degrees. But it's not just cooler. The air is moving. The Egyptians discovered that still air and shade isn't enough. You need circulation to prevent the trapped air from becoming stagnant and humid from human respiration. So these shade structures are positioned and angled to work with the prevailing winds, creating a cooling system that requires no energy input beyond the initial setup. Under the shade, you're not alone. This is where the day shift workers gather. The people whose jobs can continue through the morning heat, but who need regular breaks to avoid heat exhaustion. There are water bearers refilling clay vessels, scribes recording the morning's progress, tool maintenance workers sharpening chisels and repairing equipment, and supervisors coordinating the afternoon work schedule. Everyone understands that these shade structures aren't just rest areas. They're essential infrastructure. The shade cloth itself tells a story about Egyptian textile technology that most people never consider. This isn't just any fabric thrown over a frame. The linen is woven with a specific thread count that blocks ultraviolet radiation while still allowing air circulation. It's treated with natural oils that prevent it from breaking down under constant sun exposure. And it's maintained by specialists who understand that a failing shade structure could literally mean the difference between life and death for the workers underneath. You notice that the ground under the shade isn't just bare earth. It's been prepared with a layer of sand, mixed with ground pottery shards. This creates a surface that doesn't retain heat like stone or packed earth would, but also doesn't create dust clouds like pure sand. It's another small detail that shows how thoroughly the Egyptians thought through every aspect of working in extreme heat. The positioning of these shade structures reveals even more sophisticated planning. They're not randomly scattered around the worksite. They're placed at precisely calculated intervals so that no worker is ever more than a few minutes' walk from shelter. They're positioned upwind from dusty activities like stone cutting, so the air flowing through them is as clean as possible. And they're elevated slightly so that the airflow underneath isn't blocked by the natural undulations of the desert floor. As you sit in the shade, you start to understand that what you're experiencing isn't just shelter from the sun. It's a microclimate. The temperature is cooler, the air is moving, the UV exposure is minimized, and even the humidity is controlled through the strategic placement of water vessels that create evaporative cooling without making the space uncomfortable. Modern architects studying ancient Egyptian construction sites have found that these shade areas maintained temperatures up to 30 degrees cooler than the surrounding desert. But the real genius becomes apparent when you realize how these shade structures integrate with the overall work schedule. They're not just places to hide from the heat. They're staging areas for the next phase of work. Under the shade, day shift workers are preparing materials, maintaining equipment, and coordinating logistics for tasks that can continue through the midday heat. This isn't dead time. It's productive time made possible by environmental control. You watch as workers move efficiently between different shade areas, each one designed for specific purposes. There are shade structures near water sources for workers who need frequent hydration. There are shade areas near tool storage for equipment maintenance. There are shade structures positioned to give supervisors clear sight lines to multiple work areas. Each one is part of a larger system that recognizes that in extreme environments, infrastructure isn't luxury. It's necessity. The construction of these shade structures also reveals something important about Egyptian society. The recognition that protecting workers wasn't just humanitarian, it was economical. Building and maintaining these cooling systems required significant resources and skilled labor. The fact that they were considered essential infrastructure shows that the Egyptians understood something that many modern industries are still learning. Taking care of workers isn't just the right thing to do. It's the efficient thing to do. As the morning progresses toward noon, you can feel the heat building even in the shade. The air moving through the structure is still cooler than the surrounding desert, but it's no longer the refreshing relief it was an hour ago. This is when the next phase of the Egyptian heat management system kicks in, and it's even more sophisticated than what you've experienced so far. Water wars. The life and death logistics of desert hydration at 11 a.m. You hear a sound that every Egyptian worker knows by heart. The distinctive hollow thump of clay water jars being transported on wooden carrying frames. This isn't just someone bringing around refreshments. This is the arrival of what might be the most sophisticated hydration system ever developed for extreme environment work. You're about to witness logistics that modern disaster relief organizations would envy, all organized around one simple truth. In the desert, water isn't just important. It's the difference between finishing your shift and becoming a casualty. The water bearer approaching your shade area isn't just any worker. This is a specialist whose job requires as much skill and knowledge as stone cutting or engineering. They know exactly how much water each type of worker needs at different times of day. They understand the signs of dehydration before the workers themselves recognize them. And they've memorized a distribution schedule that ensures nobody goes too long between drinks, while also making sure the water supply lasts through the entire workday. You're handed a clay cup, and the first thing you notice is that it's not just cool, it's actually cold. This isn't an accident or some kind of magic. It's the result of Egyptian innovation in evaporative cooling. The water has been stored in specially designed clay vessels that are porous enough to allow slow evaporation from the outside surface, which creates a cooling effect that can lower the water temperature by 10 to 15 degrees below the ambient air temperature. But here's where it gets really impressive. The water bearer doesn't just hand you a cup and move on. They watch you drink, checking your skin color, your breathing rate, the steadiness of your hands. They're looking for early signs of heat exhaustion, pale or flushed skin, rapid shallow breathing, trembling hands, confusion, or unusual fatigue. These aren't just concerned colleagues. They're trained medical observers whose job is to catch heat-related illness before it becomes dangerous. The water itself tells a story about Egyptian understanding of desert survival that goes far beyond simply staying hydrated. This isn't just any water. It's been treated with small amounts of salt and minerals to replace what your body loses through sweat. The Egyptians discovered centuries before modern sports science that pure water isn't enough for people doing physical labor in extreme heat. You need electrolyte replacement, or you'll suffer from what we now call hyponatremia, a dangerous drop in blood sodium that can cause seizures and death. You drink slowly, savoring not just the coolness, but the slightly mineral taste that tells you this water has been properly prepared. The water bearer watches approvingly. They know that workers who gulp water too quickly often vomit it back up, losing precious hydration and alarming their colleagues. Proper hydration in extreme heat is a skill that has to be learned and practiced. The distribution system reveals even more sophisticated planning. Water isn't distributed randomly or on demand. It follows a precise schedule based on work intensity, time of day, and individual worker needs. Stonecutters, who work in relatively stationary positions, get water every 20 minutes. Block movers, who are doing more strenuous physical labor, get water every 15 minutes. Workers doing the most demanding jobs, lifting, carrying, climbing, get water every 10 minutes, and supervisors monitor them constantly for signs of distress. The water vessels themselves are technological marvels that most people never think about. They're made from a specific type of clay that's porous enough for evaporative cooling, but not so porous that they leak. They're shaped to maximize surface area for cooling while minimizing the amount of water lost to evaporation. They're sized to be easily portable, but large enough to serve multiple workers without requiring constant refilling trips. You watch as the water bearer moves methodically through the shade area, and you realize they're not just distributing water, they're collecting information. They're noting who's drinking normally and who seems to need more frequent hydration. They're observing who's sweating appropriately and who has stopped sweating, a dangerous sign in extreme heat. They're identifying workers who might need to be moved to less strenuous tasks or taken off duty entirely. The source of this water represents one of the most impressive feats of ancient engineering, a distribution system that brings fresh water from the Nile to work sites that might be miles away in the desert. This isn't just a matter of hauling water in jars. It's a coordinated supply chain involving transportation, storage, quality control, and distribution that has to operate flawlessly every single day, because there's no backup plan in the desert. Water storage at the work sites involves underground chambers lined with stone and sealed with natural waterproofing materials. These aren't just holes in the ground. They're engineered to keep water cool and clean even in extreme heat. The chambers are positioned to take advantage of natural underground cooling, and they're designed with multiple compartments so that if one becomes contaminated, the entire water supply isn't lost. The quality control system would impress modern health inspectors. Water is tested daily by specialists who can detect contamination by taste, smell, and appearance. Contaminated water isn't just discarded. It's analyzed to determine the source of contamination, so the problem can be fixed. Workers who show signs of waterborne illness are immediately isolated and treated, not just for their own welfare, but to prevent outbreaks that could shut down entire construction projects. As you finish your water and hand the cup back to the bearer, you're participating in a system that represents thousands of years of accumulated knowledge about surviving in extreme environments. Every detail, the timing, the temperature, the mineral content, the monitoring, the distribution logistics has been refined through generations of trial and error, often measured in lives saved or lost. The water bearer moves on to the next worker, but you know they'll be back in exactly 20 minutes, carrying water that's been kept cool, treated with the right minerals, and distributed according to a schedule that's been calculated to keep you healthy and productive through the heat of the day. In a world without air conditioning, refrigeration, or modern medical support, this hydration system was the difference between surviving and thriving in one of Earth's most challenging environments. Dressing for survival. The ancient science of desert clothing by noon. The heat is becoming genuinely oppressive, even in the shade. This is when you become acutely aware of every piece of clothing you're wearing, because in the desert, your outfit isn't fashion, it's life support equipment. What you're wearing right now represents thousands of years of trial and error in desert survival, refined into a clothing system that modern desert researchers and military units still study for inspiration. Your linen tunic isn't just any piece of fabric thrown together by ancient tailors. The linen is woven from flax in a specific way that creates maximum airflow while providing protection from the sun. The weave is loose enough to allow air circulation, but tight enough to prevent sand and debris from reaching your skin. The color isn't white because it looks clean. It's white because ancient. Egyptians discovered that light colors reflect heat rather than absorbing it, keeping you measurably cooler throughout the day. But here's what's really remarkable. The fit of your clothing isn't accidental. Your tunic is deliberately loose, creating air pockets that allow heat to escape from your body while preventing the fabric from sticking to your sweaty skin. Modern desert clothing manufacturers spend millions of dollars researching the optimal amount of space between fabric and skin for heat management. But Egyptian textile workers figured this out thousands of years ago through practical experience. The length of your tunic extends below your knees, and this isn't modesty, it's protection. Exposed skin in direct desert sunlight doesn't just burn, it can literally cook. The Egyptians learned that covering as much skin as possible while still allowing airflow was the key to preventing heat stroke and sun damage that could disable a worker for weeks. Your legs, arms, and torso are protected, but the fabric is designed to move air across your skin rather than trapping heat against it. Your head covering deserves special attention, because this is where the Egyptians showed their most sophisticated understanding of desert survival. Your linen head wrap isn't just draped randomly. It's folded and positioned according to a precise system that protects your scalp, neck, and the back of your ears while creating a cooling airflow across your head. The fabric extends down to cover your neck completely, because the Egyptians discovered that the neck contains major blood vessels close to the surface, and cooling or overheating these vessels affects your entire body temperature. The way your head wrap is tied also serves multiple purposes. It can be quickly loosened to increase airflow when you're in shade, or tightened to provide maximum protection when you have to work in direct sunlight. It includes a face covering that can be pulled up during sandstorms or when working in dusty conditions, but can be dropped down for normal breathing. This isn't just a piece of cloth. It's a sophisticated piece of environmental control equipment. Your feet are protected by sandals that represent another triumph of ancient engineering. The soles are made from woven papyrus or palm leaves that provide insulation from the burning sand while allowing air circulation around your feet. The straps are positioned to hold the sandals securely without restricting blood flow. Important because swollen feet from heat and standing can become a serious medical problem in desert conditions. But the real genius of Egyptian desert clothing becomes apparent when you realize how it works as a system. Every piece is designed to work with every other piece to create a microclimate around your body. Air flows in through the loose weave of your tunic, circulates around your torso, rises to cool your head and neck, and exits through the openings in your head wrap. It's a personal cooling system that requires no energy input and no maintenance beyond basic cleaning. The color coordination isn't just aesthetic, it's functional. Everything is white or natural linen color because these colors reflect the maximum amount of heat and ultraviolet radiation. Darker colors, while they might look more practical, would absorb heat and turn your clothing into a personal oven. The Egyptians learned this lesson so thoroughly that even decorative elements on work clothing were kept to light colors and minimal dyes. Your clothing also includes features that modern desert gear often overlooks. There are subtle reinforcements at stress points, where ropework and tool use would otherwise wear through the fabric. There are small loops and ties that allow you to secure loose ends that might otherwise flap in the wind and become distracting or dangerous around machinery. There are carefully positioned pockets and attachment points for tools that keep them accessible but don't interfere with movement or airflow. The maintenance of this clothing system is as important as its design. Linen must be washed frequently to prevent salt buildup from dried sweat, which can cause painful skin irritation and reduce the fabric's breathability. It must be dried in shade to prevent UV damage that makes the fabric brittle. It must be stored properly to prevent insect damage that could create holes and compromise protection. You notice that different workers wear slightly different variations of the same basic system, adapted to their specific jobs. Stone cutters have reinforced clothing on the arms and chest where stone chips might hit. Block movers have additional padding on the shoulders and back. Supervisors who spend more time walking in direct sunlight have longer tunics and more extensive head coverings. Each variation represents specialized knowledge about the specific hazards and needs of different types of work. The social aspects of this clothing system are also important. Wearing proper desert work clothing isn't just about personal comfort. It's about not becoming a burden to your work gang. A worker who dresses inappropriately and suffers heat exhaustion becomes everyone else's problem. Proper dress is a social responsibility, and workers who consistently dress inappropriately for desert conditions would find themselves excluded from work gangs. As the heat continues to build through midday, you become increasingly grateful for every detail of your clothing system. The loose weave that allows air circulation, the light color that reflects heat, the coverage that protects your skin, the head wrap that keeps your brain from overheating. All of it working together to keep you functional in conditions that would quickly disable someone wearing modern casual clothing. This clothing represents something remarkable about ancient Egyptian civilization. The recognition that surviving in extreme environments requires specialized knowledge and equipment, and that this knowledge is valuable enough to preserve, refine, and pass down through generations. When modern military units or researchers prepare for desert deployment, they're often rediscovering principles that Egyptian workers mastered thousands of years ago. The heat fortress, underground shelters, and cooling architecture at 1 p.m. The sun has reached its peak intensity, and even the shade structures that seemed so effective this morning are no longer adequate protection. The air itself feels like it's burning, and you can see heat waves rising from the stonework surfaces, making distant objects shimmer and dance. This is when you discover the most impressive part of the Egyptian heat management system: the underground shelters that turn the desert's own thermal properties against itself to create genuinely cool refuges in the middle of hell on Earth. You follow your work gang toward what looks like a small, unremarkable stone structure, rising only a few feet above the desert floor. But as you approach, you realize this isn't a building at all. It's the entrance to an underground complex that extends deep into the cooler earth below. This isn't just a hole in the ground. It's sophisticated architecture designed specifically to combat extreme heat, using principles that modern green building designers are still trying to perfect. The entrance is carefully engineered to prevent hot surface air from flowing down into the cool underground space. There's a series of baffles and turns that create an airlock effect, allowing people to enter and exit without compromising the internal climate. The entrance faces away from the prevailing wind direction to prevent dust and hot air from being blown directly into the opening. As you descend the stone steps, you can feel the temperature dropping with each foot of depth. This isn't just because you're getting away from the direct sun. The Egyptians understood that the earth itself is a massive thermal mass that stays cool even when the surface is blazing hot. By the time you reach the bottom of the entrance stairway, the temperature has dropped by 20 degrees, and you're breathing air that feels genuinely refreshing. The underground chamber you enter is larger than you expected, large enough to accommodate your entire work gang plus several others, with room for people to lie down, sit comfortably, and move around without crowding. The ceiling is arched stone construction that not only supports the weight of the earth above, but also creates acoustic properties that make the space feel calm and peaceful rather than claustrophobic. But the real genius becomes apparent when you realize how the ventilation system works. This isn't just a sealed cave. It's a sophisticated climate control system that uses natural convection and the thermal properties of stone to create continuous air circulation without any mechanical equipment. Cool air enters through carefully positioned openings that connect to the surface at locations where the Earth naturally maintains lower temperatures. Warm air exits through different openings positioned to take advantage of the stack effect. Hot air rising naturally creates suction that draws cool air in from below. The walls aren't just functional, they're comfortable. The stone has been carefully selected and finished to maintain cool temperatures while providing surfaces that are pleasant to lean against or sit beside. The floor is covered with woven mats that provide insulation from the cool stone while being easy to clean and maintain. There are built-in stone benches positioned to take advantage of the coolest spots in the chamber. Water storage in these underground shelters represents another level of sophisticated engineering. Clay vessels are embedded in niches carved into the walls at points where the Earth's natural cooling is most effective. The water in these vessels stays genuinely cold, not just cool, but cold enough to be refreshing, even when the surface temperature is over 120 degrees. The vessels are positioned where natural air circulation flows past them, creating evaporative cooling that benefits the entire chamber. You notice that different areas of the underground shelter are designated for different purposes. There's a sleeping area with stone platforms covered with mats where workers can rest during the hottest part of the day. There's a food preparation area where meals can be prepared without adding heat to the living space. There's a tool maintenance area where equipment can be repaired and sharpened in comfort. Each area takes advantage of specific thermal properties of its location within the chamber. The lighting system is particularly clever. Oil lamps are positioned in specially designed recesses that contain the heat while providing adequate illumination. The recesses are connected to the ventilation system so that the heat from the lamps doesn't accumulate in the living space but is carried away by the air circulation. This allows people to see what they're doing without adding to the thermal load of the shelter. The social organization of these underground shelters reveals important aspects of Egyptian work culture. Space is allocated not by social status, but by physical need. Workers who are showing signs of heat stress get priority access to the coolest spots. Workers who are rotating off the most demanding jobs get first claim on sleeping areas. The shelters operate as communal spaces where the welfare of the group takes priority over individual preferences. Food storage in these underground chambers works on the same principles as water storage, taking advantage of the Earth's natural cooling properties to keep perishables fresh much longer than would be possible on the surface. Bread stays fresh for days instead of hours. Dried meat and fish remain palatable. Fresh vegetables don't wilt immediately. This allows work gangs to maintain better nutrition even in extreme conditions. The construction of these underground shelters required as much skill and planning as the famous monuments above ground. The excavation had to be precisely calculated to reach the optimal depth for cooling, without going so deep that construction became dangerous or water. Seepage became a problem. The stonework had to be strong enough to support the earth above while incorporating the ventilation and storage systems. The waterproofing had to prevent moisture problems while allowing the beneficial aspects of earth contact. Maintenance of these shelters is ongoing and critical. The ventilation openings must be kept clear of sand and debris. The water storage systems must be cleaned and refilled regularly. The structural elements must be inspected for settling or damage. Workers are assigned to shelter maintenance duties on a rotating basis, because everyone understands that these underground refuges aren't luxury accommodations. They're essential survival infrastructure. As you settle into the cool comfort of the underground shelter, you realize you're experiencing something that very few people in human history have had access to: genuinely effective climate control in extreme desert conditions. The temperature here is not just tolerable, but actually comfortable. The air circulation is fresh and clean. The environment is calm and conducive to rest and recovery. This isn't just shelter from the heat. This is a place where human beings can actually thrive in conditions that would otherwise be deadly. The midday hibernation, strategic rest in peak heat. At 2 p.m., you're settling into the underground shelter's coolest section, and around you, something remarkable is happening that would look like laziness to an uninformed observer, but is actually one of the most sophisticated workplace management strategies ever developed. Your entire work gang, hundreds of people who were intensely active just hours ago, are now lying still, breathing slowly and deliberately minimizing all physical activity. This isn't taking a break. This is entering a state of strategic metabolic suspension designed to survive the most dangerous part of the desert day. The silence in the underground chamber is profound, but it's not empty silence. It's purposeful. Everyone understands that talking, moving unnecessarily, or engaging in any activity that raises heart rate or generates body heat is counterproductive during peak heat hours. Your body is working hard enough just maintaining normal temperature in extreme conditions. Any additional energy expenditure could push you over the edge into heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Your breathing has naturally slowed and deepened, not because you're asleep, but because your body is automatically adjusting to heat stress. The Egyptians understood this physiological response centuries before modern medicine could explain it. They built their work schedules around the recognition that human bodies have natural heat management responses that should be supported rather than fought against. The midday rest isn't just about avoiding the hot sun. It's about allowing your body's cooling systems to operate at maximum efficiency. The position you're lying in isn't random. It's been chosen to optimize heat dissipation from your body. You're lying on your back with your arms and legs slightly spread, maximizing the surface area of your body that's in contact with the cool stone and allowing air to circulate around all your extremities. Your head is positioned to take advantage of the coolest airflow in the chamber. These positioning techniques were developed through generations of experience with heat management. Around you, other workers are doing the same thing, but you notice that different people are positioned slightly differently based on their individual heat tolerance and the specific demands of their jobs. Workers who spent the morning doing the most strenuous labor are placed in the coolest spots and given the most space for heat dissipation. Workers who will be returning to demanding jobs in the late afternoon are positioned where they can achieve the deepest rest and recovery. The water consumption during this rest period follows a different pattern than during active work. Instead of frequent small drinks, you're taking larger, slower drinks at longer intervals, allowing your body to fully process and utilize the water for cooling rather than just replacing immediate losses. The water bearers continue their rounds, but they're now monitoring for different signs of overhydration, which can be as dangerous as dehydration, and the subtle indicators that someone's cooling system is being overwhelmed despite the controlled environment. Food during the midday rest is minimal and carefully chosen. Light meals of bread, dried fruit, and vegetables that don't require cooking and don't generate additional heat in your digestive system. The Egyptians learned that eating heavy meals during peak heat puts additional stress on your body's cooling system, as digestion generates internal heat. The timing of meals is coordinated with the cooling schedule to minimize thermal stress. The duration of this rest period isn't arbitrary. It's calculated based on the time it takes for the sun to pass its peak intensity and begin its afternoon descent. But it's also based on human physiology, the time it takes for your body temperature to stabilize, your heart rate to normalize, and your hydration levels to be fully restored. This rest period typically lasts 3 to 4 hours, from roughly 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., encompassing the most dangerous part of the desert day. Medical monitoring during the rest period is subtle but constant. Supervisors and medical specialists move quietly through the chamber, observing breathing patterns, skin color, and other indicators of heat stress. They're looking for workers who aren't cooling down properly despite the controlled environment, people who might be developing more serious heat-related illness, or individuals who might not be ready to return to work when the afternoon shift begins. The psychological aspects of the midday rest are as important as the physical ones. The enforced quiet and stillness serve as a form of meditation that helps workers manage the stress and anxiety that can build up when working in dangerous conditions. The communal aspect of the rest, everyone in the same situation, following the same routine, creates solidarity and mutual support that's essential for group survival in extreme environments. Tool and equipment management during the rest period shows another level of sophisticated planning. Tools that we use during the morning shift are cleaned, repaired, and prepared for afternoon work. But this maintenance is done by specialized workers whose jobs are less physically demanding and who can work effectively even during peak heat. The tools themselves are stored in the coolest parts of the shelter, so they won't be burning hot when work resumes. The transition out of the rest period is as carefully managed as the entry into it. You don't just jump up and rush back to work when the time comes. There's a gradual reactivation process that allows your body to adjust from the deeply relaxed state back to active work readiness. This includes gentle movement, increased water consumption, and a period of light activity before returning to full work intensity. Work scheduling around the midday rest reveals the sophistication of Egyptian project management. Different types of work are scheduled for different times based on their heat sensitivity and the recovery time they require. Stone cutting, which requires precision and generates heat from friction, is done only during the coolest parts of the day. Heavy lifting and transportation work is scheduled for early morning and late afternoon. Supervision and planning activities that don't require intense physical labor can continue during milder heat periods. The economic implications of the midday rest system are significant. It means that for 3 to 4 hours every day, hundreds of thousands of workers are not actively producing anything measurable. But the Egyptians understood that this apparent loss of productivity was actually an investment in sustained long-term productivity. Workers who were pushed through peak heat without adequate rest would quickly become less efficient, more prone to accidents, and more likely to develop heat-related illnesses that could sideline them for days or weeks. As you lie in the cool underground chamber, feeling your body temperature stabilize and your energy gradually restore, You're participating in a survival strategy that allowed ancient civilizations to accomplish massive construction projects in environments that would challenge modern engineering. The midday rest isn't just about comfort. It's about recognizing human limitations and working with them rather than against them to achieve incredible results. The afternoon return. Graduated re-entry to desert work at 4:30 p.m. You feel a subtle change in the air circulation of the underground shelter, and you know without checking any timepiece that the afternoon work period is approaching. The supervisors begin moving through the chamber, not with urgency, but with the quiet efficiency of people who have done this thousands of times. The transition from rest to work in extreme heat conditions isn't something you can rush. It's a carefully orchestrated process that determines whether the afternoon shift will be productive or dangerous. Your body has been in a state of deep rest for over 3 hours, and every system has slowed down to conserve energy and manage heat. Your heart rate is at its lowest point of the day. Your breathing is deep and slow. Your blood vessels are dilated for maximum heat dissipation, and your muscles are completely relaxed. Simply jumping up and rushing back to work would be a shock to your system that could cause immediate heat exhaustion or worse. The reactivation process begins with gentle movement while you're still lying down. You flex your fingers and toes, rotate your ankles and wrists, and gradually move your arms and legs to get blood flowing back through your extremities. This isn't arbitrary stretching. It's a systematic process designed to gradually increase circulation and prepare your cardiovascular system for the increased demands of active work. Water consumption during the transition period follows a specific protocol. You drink more water now than you did during the rest period, but it's taken in measured amounts over the course of 15 to 20 minutes. Drinking too much too quickly would stress your system, while drinking too little would leave you inadequately hydrated for the return to work. The water bearers monitor this process closely, ensuring that each worker is properly hydrated but not overloaded. As you slowly sit up and then stand, you can feel your body adjusting to the change in position. The cool air of the underground chamber still feels refreshing, but you're aware that in a few minutes you'll be returning to the surface where the temperature, while lower than the midday peak, is still intense. Your body is preparing for this transition, gradually increasing heart rate and adjusting circulation patterns. The timing of the return to surface work isn't just about when the sun begins to set. It's based on precise knowledge of how temperature changes throughout the desert day. At 4:30 p.m., the air temperature is still brutally hot, but it's reached its peak and begun the gradual decline toward evening. More importantly, the angle of the sun has changed enough that there are longer shadows and more opportunities for shaded work. Food consumption during the transition period is light but important. Small amounts of dried fruit or bread provide energy for the upcoming work period without putting stress on your digestive system. The timing is critical. Eating too early in the transition process could interfere with your body's temperature regulation, while waiting too long could leave you without adequate fuel for physical labor. The equipment check during transition reveals another level of planning sophistication. Tools that were stored in the cool underground chamber during the rest period are now warm enough to handle comfortably, but not yet hot enough to cause burns. Rope, wooden handles, and metal tools are all at optimal temperatures for safe and efficient use. This timing had to be learned through experience, because tools that are too cold can be slippery and dangerous, while tools that are too hot are unusable. Group coordination during the transition is essential. Work gangs that were separated during the rest period now reassemble and confirm that everyone is ready to return to work. Workers who show any signs of heat stress, excessive fatigue, disorientation, nausea, or unusual skin color are identified and either given additional recovery time or assigned to less demanding tasks. The exit from the underground shelter is managed as carefully as the original entry. Small groups leave at intervals to prevent overcrowding at the entrance and to allow supervisors to monitor each person's adjustment to the surface temperature. The first few minutes on the surface are critical. This is when heat exhaustion is most likely to occur as your body adjusts from the cool underground environment to the still intense desert heat. Surface conditions at 4:30 p.m. present a different set of challenges than morning work. The air temperature is still dangerously high, but the quality of heat has changed. Instead of the building intensity of morning heat, you're now dealing with accumulated heat. The sun has been beating down on stone, sand, and equipment all day, and everything is radiating stored thermal energy. Metal tools are untouchable. Stone surfaces can cause serious burns. And even the sand is hot enough to be painful through sandal solace. Work assignments for the afternoon shift are carefully matched to conditions and individual worker capacity. Workers who showed the best heat tolerance during morning work and who rested most effectively during midday are assigned to the most demanding afternoon tasks. Workers who struggled with heat stress in the morning or who didn't recover completely during rest are given lighter duties or jobs that can be performed in available shade. The afternoon work pace is different from the morning pace. You're not racing against the clock in the same way. The heat will gradually decrease rather than increase. But you're working with accumulated fatigue and thermal stress from the morning shift. The pace is steady but measured, designed to maintain productivity, while preventing the heat exhaustion that becomes more likely as your body's cooling systems become less efficient through the day. Hydration schedules during afternoon work are more frequent and more closely monitored than during morning work. Your body has already been dealing with heat stress for hours. Your electrolyte balance is more precarious, and your heat tolerance is reduced. Water breaks come every 10 to 15 minutes regardless of work assignment, and supervisors watch for early signs of heat-related problems. The afternoon shift represents something remarkable about Egyptian work organization, the recognition that human performance changes throughout the day in predictable ways, and that work schedules need to account for these changes rather than trying to maintain constant output regardless of conditions. The afternoon shift isn't just a continuation of morning work. It's a different type of work designed for different physiological and environmental conditions. As you begin your first afternoon task, you're aware that you're operating within a system that has been refined over generations to extract maximum productivity from human workers in extreme conditions while keeping those workers healthy and functional. Every aspect of the transition from rest to work has been calculated based on accumulated knowledge about how human beings respond to desert heat and how those responses can be managed to achieve both individual survival and collective success. The second wind, late afternoon productivity and falling heat at 6 p.m. Something unexpected happens that modern workers in air-conditioned environments rarely experience. You feel genuinely energized and productive despite having already worked a full morning shift and endured the brutal midday heat. This isn't just psychological relief from knowing the day is nearly over. It's a physiological phenomenon that the ancient Egyptians learned to exploit through sophisticated scheduling that turned the natural rhythms of desert, heat, and human biology into a powerful productivity system. The temperature has dropped enough that physical work no longer feels like a fight for survival, but it's still warm enough that you don't feel sluggish or cold. Your body has spent the day adapting to heat stress, and now that the stress is lessening, you're operating with enhanced circulation, improved heat dissipation, and the kind of physical conditioning that only comes from sustained exposure to challenging conditions. You're experiencing what modern exercise physiologists call heat acclimatization, but the Egyptians just called it the late afternoon surge. The quality of work you're able to do now is different from morning work in interesting ways. The precision tasks that required the cool morning hours are finished, but you can now tackle sustained physical labor that would have been dangerous at midday. Your heat tolerance has improved throughout the day. Your hydration systems are perfectly calibrated, and your body's cooling mechanisms are operating at peak efficiency. Stone moving in the late afternoon reveals the sophisticated understanding Egyptians had of thermal expansion and contraction. The massive blocks that were too hot to touch safely at midday have cooled enough to handle, but they're still warm enough that thermal expansion hasn't completely reversed. This means the blocks are actually slightly easier to move than they would be in cool morning air, because thermal expansion has reduced friction between stone surfaces and wooden rollers. The work pace during this period is steady and sustainable in ways that morning work couldn't be. You're not racing against rising heat, so there's less frantic urgency. But you're also not fighting against energy-sapping extreme temperatures, so you can maintain consistent output for longer periods. The Egyptians learned to schedule their most sustained physical tasks for this time period: long-distance transport of materials, sustained lifting and positioning work, and tasks that required steady effort over extended periods. Tool performance in late afternoon heat shows another dimension of Egyptian technical knowledge. Metal tools that were unusable at midday are now at optimal temperatures, warm enough to expand slightly for better fit in wooden handles, but not so hot as to cause burns. Stone cutting tools work most efficiently when they're warm but not overheated, because thermal expansion actually improves the precision of the cutting edge. The social dynamics of late afternoon work are notably different from morning work. The shared experience of surviving another day of desert heat creates a sense of camaraderie and mutual accomplishment that energizes work gangs. People who struggled with heat stress earlier in the day are now operating at full capacity, contributing equally to group efforts. The evening shift becomes a celebration of collective endurance and skill. Supervision during late afternoon work requires different skills than morning supervision. Instead of coordinating complex logistics and monitoring for heat exhaustion, supervisors are now focused on maintaining momentum and quality while everyone is feeling energized and confident. The risk shifts from heat-related accidents to overconfidence accidents. Workers feeling so good that they attempt tasks beyond their capabilities or ignore safety procedures. Water consumption during the evening shift follows a different pattern again. You're drinking less frequently than during peak heat, but you're drinking larger amounts to prepare for the next day. The focus shifts from immediate heat management to overnight recovery and preparation for tomorrow's morning shift. The water is still kept cool, but the emphasis is on hydration for recovery rather than immediate cooling. The lengthening shadows of late afternoon create work opportunities that weren't available earlier in the day. Shaded work areas that were too small to be useful at midday now provide substantial refuge from direct sun. Work that requires precision and concentration can be performed in these shadow areas, while the most heat-tolerant workers handle the remaining tasks in direct sunlight. Equipment maintenance during late afternoon takes advantage of optimal temperature conditions. Tools can be sharpened, repaired, and prepared for the next day while they're at ideal working temperatures. Rope and wooden equipment that was too hot to handle safely earlier can now be inspected, maintained, and properly stored. This maintenance time is essential for preventing equipment failures that could be dangerous or costly. The coordination between different work gangs becomes more complex but also more efficient during late afternoon work. Groups that were working separately during peak heat hours can now coordinate tasks that require multiple teams. Stone blocks that were prepared by cutters in the morning can be moved by transport teams in the late afternoon. Assembly work that requires multiple specialties can be coordinated when everyone is operating at peak efficiency. Food preparation and consumption during late afternoon follows patterns designed to support recovery and preparation for the next day. Larger meals become possible as digestive systems are no longer stressed by extreme heat. Fresh foods that were impossible to prepare safely during midday can now be handled without spoilage risks. The evening meal becomes an important part of recovery and social cohesion for work gangs. Quality control during late afternoon work requires different attention than morning quality control. Work performed during this period tends to be of high quality because workers are operating under optimal conditions. But there's a risk of overconfidence leading to shortcuts or inadequate attention to detail. Supervisors must balance maintaining the productive momentum with ensuring that quality standards don't slip. The planning for the next day's work happens during late afternoon hours, when supervisors can think clearly and workers can participate effectively in coordination discussions. Work assignments, material preparation, and schedule coordination for the following day are all handled during this period, when everyone's cognitive function is operating at peak efficiency despite the day's heat stress. As the sun continues to decline and the temperature drops further, you realize you're experiencing something that very few people in human history have had access to. A work system so perfectly adapted to extreme environmental conditions that it turns those conditions into advantages rather than obstacles. The late afternoon productivity surge isn't accidental. It's the result of thousands of years of refinement in understanding how human beings can not just survive, but thrive in the desert heat. The evening cool down, transitioning from work to recovery at 7:30 p.m. The sun is low enough on the horizon that its heat is no longer oppressive, and you're experiencing one of the most pleasant parts of the desert workday, the evening transition, when your body begins to shift from work mode to recovery mode, while the temperature becomes genuinely comfortable for the first time since dawn. This isn't just the end of work. It's the beginning of a carefully orchestrated recovery process that prepares you for tomorrow's challenges while allowing your body to heal from today's heat stress. The change in air quality is immediately noticeable. The dust that hung in the air during the heat of the day has settled. The oppressive weight of superheated air has lifted, and there's often a slight breeze that feels like a gift after hours of still, burning air. Your skin, which has been working overtime all day to regulate your body temperature through sweating and heat dissipation, can finally relax and begin to recover from the constant stress. Work tasks during the evening transition are chosen specifically because they can be performed while your body is winding down from the day's heat stress. Light maintenance work, tool cleaning, material organization, and preparation tasks that don't require intense physical effort of concentration. This isn't busy work. These tasks are essential for the next day's operations, but they're scheduled for evening specifically because they match your body's natural transition toward rest and recovery. The evening meal represents one of the most sophisticated aspects of Egyptian heat management nutrition, designed specifically to support recovery from extreme heat stress while preparing your body for the next day's challenges. The foods aren't just whatever happens to be available. They're carefully chosen combinations that replace electrolytes lost through sweating, provide easily digestible energy for overnight recovery, and supply nutrients that support your body's heat adaptation processes. Bread made from emmer wheat provides complex carbohydrates that restore energy without stressing your digestive system. Dried fruits like dates and figs supply natural sugars and potassium to replace electrolytes lost through sweat. Fresh vegetables, when available, provide vitamins and minerals that support your body's cooling systems. Small amounts of fish or fowl provide protein for muscle recovery without the digestive heat load of red meat. The timing of the evening meal is as important as its content. Eating too early in the cooling process can interfere with your body's temperature regulation as it transitions from heat stress to normal function. Eating too late can interfere with sleep and overnight recovery. The meal is timed for the period when your body temperature has stabilized, but before the evening cool-down triggers your natural sleep preparation processes. Water consumption during the evening transition shifts. Focus from immediate cooling and hydration to overnight preparation and next day readiness. You're drinking larger amounts less frequently, allowing your body to fully process and store water for overnight recovery and early morning preparation. The water is no longer kept at the coldest possible temperature. Slightly cool water is actually better for evening hydration because it doesn't shock your system as it transitions toward rest. Personal hygiene during the evening transition serves both comfort and health functions that are critical in extreme heat conditions. Washing removes the salt, dust, and debris that have accumulated on your skin throughout the day, preventing skin irritation and infection that could affect your ability to work. But it also serves as a cooling and relaxation ritual that helps your body transition from work stress to recovery mode. The washing process uses water that's been heated slightly by sitting in the late afternoon sun, not hot, but warm enough to be comfortable and effective for cleaning without being shocking to your heat-stressed system. The timing allows you to air dry in the comfortable evening temperature, which feels refreshing after a day of heat stress and helps your skin recover from the constant sweating and sun exposure. Social activities during the evening transition serve important psychological and social functions that support the overall heat management system. Work gangs gather to share the day's experiences, discuss challenges and solutions, and maintain the social cohesion that's essential for group survival in extreme conditions. These aren't random social gatherings. They're structured interactions that serve specific functions in maintaining group effectiveness and individual morale. The sharing of experiences during evening gatherings serves as informal training and knowledge transfer. Workers who found effective solutions to heat-related problems share their discoveries. Workers who struggled with particular challenges receive advice and support from more experienced colleagues. This knowledge sharing is essential for continuous improvement in heat management techniques and overall survival strategies. Equipment preparation for the next day happens during the evening transition when tools and materials can be handled comfortably and inspected thoroughly. Tools are cleaned, sharpened, and positioned for easy access during the pre-dawn work preparation. Materials are organized and staged to minimize the time workers need to spend in direct sunlight during morning setup. Rope, wood, and metal equipment are inspected for heat damage and repaired or replaced as necessary. The evening transition also includes preparation of the underground shelters for the next day's use. Sleeping areas are cleaned and prepared. Water storage vessels are refilled and positioned, and ventilation systems are checked to ensure they're operating properly. This preparation is essential because there's no time for these tasks during the heat emergency conditions of midday. Personal preparation for the next day includes inspection and preparation of clothing and protective equipment. Linen garments are checked for wear, damage, or salt buildup from dried sweat. Head coverings are cleaned and properly arranged. Sandals are inspected for damage that could cause problems during the next day's work. This personal equipment maintenance is essential for effective heat protection. Rest preparation during the evening transition involves more than just getting ready to sleep. Your sleeping area is prepared with attention to airflow, positioning, and temperature regulation that will support optimal recovery from heat stress. Sleeping mats are positioned to take advantage of natural cooling, and personal water supplies are positioned for easy access during the night. The psychological transition from work stress to rest during the evening cooldown is as important as the physical transition. The intense focus and alertness required for safe work in extreme heat conditions needs to gradually wind down to allow for restorative sleep. The evening activities, social interaction, meal preparation, personal care, and equipment maintenance serve as a bridge between the high-stress work environment and the rest that's essential for recovery and preparation for tomorrow's challenges. As the temperature continues to drop and the sun sets, you're participating in a recovery system that's as sophisticated and essential as the work systems that got you through the day. The evening transition isn't just time off from work. It's an integral part of a comprehensive heat management system that allows human beings to not just survive but maintain high productivity in one of Earth's most challenging environments. Night recovery and dawn preparation. The cycle completes at 9 p.m. The desert heat has finally released its grip, and you're experiencing something that modern people rarely understand: the profound relief and recovery that comes when your body can finally operate normally after a day of extreme heat stress. The temperature has dropped 40 degrees from its midday peak. There's often a gentle breeze stirring the air, and your body is beginning the complex recovery processes that will prepare you for tomorrow's challenges. This isn't just rest time. It's when the most critical aspects of desert survival happen, during the precious hours when the environment becomes supportive rather than hostile. Your body temperature, which has been elevated all day despite your cooling efforts, finally begins to normalize. This isn't just a matter of feeling more comfortable. It's when your organs can operate without the stress of constant heat management, when your blood circulation can return to normal patterns, and when your muscles can begin to repair the microscopic damage caused by working in extreme conditions. The night recovery period is as essential to desert survival as any of the daytime heat management techniques. Sleep in desert conditions isn't just about being tired from work. It's about providing your body with the deep rest necessary to recover from heat stress and prepare for tomorrow's thermal challenges. Your sleeping area has been carefully chosen and prepared to optimize cooling throughout the night. You're sleeping on mats positioned to take advantage of air circulation, with easy access to water and in locations that will stay cool until the pre-dawn work preparation begins. The positioning of your sleeping area takes advantage of thermal principles that the Egyptians understood intuitively. Stone surfaces that absorb brutal heat during the day now slowly release that heat upward and away from ground-level sleeping areas. Earth that was scorching hot in direct sunlight now provides insulation and thermal mass that maintains moderate temperatures through the night. Your sleeping mat is positioned to benefit from these natural cooling effects. Water consumption during the night follows a pattern designed to maintain optimal hydration while supporting your body's recovery processes. You're not drinking the frequent small amounts required during heat stress, but rather taking larger drinks at intervals that support cellular recovery and prepare your body for tomorrow's heat stress. The water is still kept cool, but not cold. Your body's temperature regulation systems are recovering and don't need the additional cooling. The night air carries sounds that were masked during the day by heat distortion and the constant noise of intense work. You can hear the subtle sounds of desert life, the distant conversations of other work gangs, and the gentle sounds of ongoing nighttime activities. Tool preparation, equipment maintenance, and the quiet work of specialists whose jobs continue through the cooler hours. Food digestion during the night recovery period is more efficient than it could be during heat stress. Your body can now properly process the evening meal, extracting maximum nutrition to support recovery and prepare for tomorrow's energy needs. The digestive system, which was minimally functional during extreme heat, can now operate normally to fuel the recovery and preparation processes. Night work activities are limited but important. Specialists continue tasks that are impossible during heat stress: detailed tool maintenance, precision equipment repair, and preparation of materials that require careful handling. This work is done by people whose heat tolerance allows them to work later into the evening, or whose jobs are less physically demanding and don't require the same recovery time. The social aspects of night recovery serve important functions in maintaining group cohesion and morale. Work gangs gather for meals, conversation, and the sharing of experiences that builds the solidarity essential for group survival in extreme conditions. These aren't just leisure activities. They're essential components of the social system that makes large-scale desert work possible. Knowledge transfer happens during night recovery when people have the mental energy for learning and teaching. Experienced workers share techniques with newcomers. Specialists explain equipment maintenance to general workers, and supervisors discuss planning and coordination with work gang leaders. This knowledge sharing is essential for maintaining and improving the heat management systems. Personal hygiene and healthcare during night recovery is more thorough than the basic maintenance possible during heat stress. Workers can properly clean and inspect their bodies for heat-related skin problems, salt buildup, or minor injuries that need attention. This isn't vanity. Proper hygiene in extreme heat conditions is essential for preventing infections and skin problems that could disable workers. Equipment preparation for the next day happens during night recovery, when tools and materials can be handled comfortably and inspected thoroughly. Metal tools are cleaned and oiled to prevent heat damage. Wooden equipment is inspected for cracking or warping from thermal stress. And rope and fabric items are checked for wear that could cause failures during the next day's work. The underground shelters are prepared during night recovery for the next day's emergency use. Sleeping areas are cleaned and arranged. Water storage is replenished and positioned. And ventilation systems are checked to ensure proper operation. This preparation is essential because there will be no opportunity for these tasks during the heat emergency of midday. Weather observation during night recovery allows experienced supervisors to assess conditions for the next day's work. Wind patterns, humidity levels, and cloud cover all affect heat stress and work planning. Supervisors use the cool night hours to observe conditions and make adjustments to the next day's schedule and work. Assignments based on expected heat conditions. Sleep preparation during night recovery involves positioning your body and possessions to optimize rest and prepare for the pre-dawn work startup. Your sleeping position is chosen to maintain cooling through the night. Your tools are positioned for quick access during morning preparation, and your clothing is arranged for efficient dressing in the darkness before dawn. The transition towards sleep happens gradually as your body completes its temperature normalization and begins the deeper recovery processes that happen during rest. Your breathing slows and deepens, your heart rate decreases to its lowest levels of the day, and your body begins the cellular repair processes that prepare you for tomorrow's heat stress. As you settle into sleep, you're completing a daily cycle that represents one of humanity's most sophisticated adaptations to extreme environmental conditions. Every aspect of the day, from pre-dawn work through midday survival to evening recovery, has been refined through generations of experience into a system that allows human beings to not just survive, but accomplish incredible feats of construction and organization in conditions that would challenge modern technology. The night recovery period isn't just rest. It's when your body rebuilds its heat tolerance, repairs the damage from thermal stress, and prepares for tomorrow's challenges. When you wake at 3:30 a.m. to begin another day, you'll be operating with enhanced heat adaptation, improved cooling efficiency, and the kind of desert survival skills that allowed ancient civilizations to thrive in environments that we now consider barely habitable. Tomorrow will bring another day of extreme heat, demanding work, and sophisticated survival strategies. But tonight, as the desert finally cools and your body recovers from the day's thermal stress, you're experiencing the profound satisfaction that comes from mastering one of nature's most challenging environments through knowledge, cooperation, and the accumulated wisdom of generations of desert workers who learned that surviving extreme heat isn't just about enduring. It's about understanding, adapting, and thriving. Closing, and there you have it. A complete day in the life of an ancient Egyptian worker. From the pre-dawn preparation through the night recovery that prepared them for tomorrow's challenges. What we've explored tonight isn't just ancient history. It's a masterclass in human adaptation that challenges everything we think we know about working in extreme conditions. These weren't primitive people struggling helplessly against a hostile environment. They were sophisticated engineers, planners, and survival specialists who developed heat management systems that modern military units and industrial operations still study for inspiration. They understood principles of thermal regulation, hydration science, work scheduling, and environmental adaptation that we're still trying to perfect with modern technology. The next time you complain about your air conditioning being too cold or too warm, remember the workers who built the pyramids with nothing but linen clothing, clay water vessels, and accumulated knowledge passed down through generations. They didn't just survive in conditions that would hospitalize most modern people. They thrived, created architectural marvels, and maintained complex civilizations in one of Earth's most challenging environments. What strikes me most about this story is how it reveals the incredible capacity of human beings to adapt, innovate, and excel when they work together with knowledge and purpose. These ancient Egyptian workers weren't superhuman. They were regular people who developed extraordinary systems for dealing with extraordinary challenges. Their legacy isn't just in the monuments they built, but in the proof that humans can master any environment if they approach it with intelligence, cooperation, and respect for natural limits. In our age of climate change and extreme weather, perhaps there's something we can learn from people who spent centuries perfecting the art of thriving in impossible heat. Sweet dreams, and remember, the next time you think you're having a tough day at work, at least you're probably not doing it in 120-degree heat with nothing but linen clothes and strategic shade to keep you alive.